Ever feel like your senses just won't quit?
Yeah.
Like they're stuck on high?
Yeah. Yeah.
Today, we're going to really dig into those sensory issues, especially for folks on the autism spectrum. We're using that article you sent over, by the way.
Great one.
Yeah. Should be really interesting to, see how those everyday things, sounds, textures, all that can sometimes be like way too much.
Right. And it's a process figuring this all out. I mean, a lot of times people think it's just being picky, but...
Oh, it's way more than that.
Way more, yeah. It's how your brain's processing everything. Like, imagine if your brain's like a sound mixer.
I like that.
But the levels are all messed up.
Out of whack.
Some things are cranked up, some are way too low.
That is a perfect analogy. Out of whack. Because this article actually uses the words constant bombardment. Now, I can imagine what that means, but for our listeners, can you kind of paint that picture? What does that actually look and feel like?
Well, think about, trying to talk to someone at a rock concert.
Oh, impossible.
While you're wearing, like, the itchiest sweater you can imagine.
The worst.
That's sensory overload.
Oh, man.
This article actually gives an example. Someone with auditory sensitivity, they said, and this is a quote, "Every clattering dish, every echoing voice, it pierced through me like a shard of glass."
Whoa. Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah.
And it's not always about, like, too much input either, is it?
Right.
There's that whole other side.
Yeah.
Hyposensitivity.
Hyposensitivity, yeah.
Where it's almost like the senses are dulled.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like having this constant ringing in your ear, but your brain wants more input.
So it's seeking it out.
It's seeking it out, which is why some people crave certain sounds, textures.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and understanding that difference, how it's being processed, that's key to getting the right support.
And, that support might need to change too. Because the article makes it clear this isn't like you're born with this, it stays the same your whole life.
Right. It's not a life sentence.
It can evolve, right?
It absolutely evolves. Some people, their sensitivities might actually get better with age.
Interesting.
Others, they might find new challenges popping up.
Wow.
Or maybe things just intensify as they get older.
So it's about constantly adapting.
Adapting, exactly. And making sure those support systems, they're evolving too, right along with the person. So important. So it's not just a childhood thing, it's a lifespan thing.
Lifespan, yeah. You got it. And the good news is there are so many different ways to help. We're talking therapies, technology, all sorts of things to help people navigate their world, comfortably.
Okay, so let's get into that. What's in this toolbox of strategies this article's talking about?
Well, one that's really interesting is sensory integration therapy.
Okay.
And that's basically, it's like retraining the brain using controlled sensory input. So picture this. A therapist is guiding someone, right? And they're interacting with different textures, sounds, movements. But it's all in a really safe, controlled environment.
So they're not overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It helps them slowly get used to those sensations that they might normally find, overwhelming.
So it's like dipping your toes in the water before you
jump in the deep end.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's a process. And then what about occupational therapy? I hear that a lot, but how does that fit in?
So that's more about giving people actual life skills.
Ah, okay.
Practical stuff. Like, let's say you have a real sensitivity to touch, right?
Right.
An occupational therapist can actually teach you ways to handle those sensations while you're getting dressed, maybe making a meal.
So it's about empowering them to do those daily things, not just expecting them to white-knuckle through it.
Exactly.
And what about this whole assistive technology thing? That seems huge.
It's huge.
This article mentions it a lot.
Yeah, and it makes a world of difference, Noise canceling, headphones, apps for sensory stuff.
Oh, I can see that.
It's amazing. And the thing is, it can be so personalized, right? It's about finding the right tool for each person's sensory needs. Because everyone's different, right?
Exactly. And you know what? It just seems like so much of this is about giving people back that control.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's therapy or the right tools or even just understanding it's about saying, hey, you've got this, not you need to fit into this box.
You got it. And it's not all about fancy therapies or expensive gadgets either. No. This article actually highlights how important simple coping mechanisms are.
Oh, interesting.
And honestly, that's something everyone can benefit from.
Okay, so break that down for us. What are we talking about here? What kind of coping mechanisms?
Think about deep breathing.
Oh, classic.
Mindfulness practices, things like that.
Yeah.
Those are things anyone can use to manage feeling overwhelmed, whether they're on the spectrum or not.
Right. It's just about being in tune with yourself.
Exactly. Tuning in, finding ways to self-regulate. It's powerful stuff.
It's like having your own emotional toolkit, right?
Yeah.
Something we could all use once in a while.
Absolutely.
But even with all the best tools, sometimes you just need other people, you know?
Oh, 100%.
And this article really emphasizes that whole community aspect,
Yeah.
especially for folks with sensory challenges.
It's so key. I mean, you can read about it, sure, but connecting with people who live it every day,
That's different.
that's empathy right there. The article talks a lot about support groups, online communities, even just being open with your loved ones.
Yeah, those real conversations.
Exactly, because that's where you get real understanding, real support. It's invaluable.
It's like you can know something in your head, but then to really get it,
It's totally different.
totally different. And, you know, there's this one story in the article that really stuck with me. It was this young guy with autism, and he was describing what it's like to be in a crowded room.
Okay.
He said it was like being trapped inside a ringing bell.
Wow.
And when I read that, just like, click, you know.
Yeah.
This isn't about someone being difficult. It's about their experience. We need to get that.
We absolutely do. And that's why this whole idea of communication, being open, it's so important, especially in those close relationships.
So not just assuming we get it, but actually asking, right?
Exactly. Sometimes the simplest things, like just saying, hey, is there anything I can do to make this like more comfortable for you?
Huge difference.
Huge. It can change everything because it shifts that whole dynamic.
Instead of what's wrong with you,
Yeah.
it's what's going on and how can I help?
Exactly. And that right there, that's huge.
That's everything. And it's not just about people on the spectrum either, is
Yeah.
it? I mean, we all have our things, right?
We all do. We all have those moments when a sound is too much, the light's too bright, that tag on our shirt is driving us crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
It's human.
Totally. And being aware of that in ourselves and other people. I mean, that's how we build better relationships. That's empathy, right?
100%. It's paying attention to those cues,
Yeah.
you know? Are they fidgeting? Do they need a break from the noise?
It's like detective work, but for feelings.
Kind of. And it's not about judging. It's about, okay, what am I missing here? Maybe someone's fidgeting in a meeting not because they're bored, but because they need that to manage their sensory input.
It's about being open to a totally different explanation than the one you thought up in your head.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And that's how we learn. I mean, reading this article, that's great, but actually listening to someone's experience, especially someone on the spectrum.
Game changer.
Game changer. And that's what this article does so well, I think.
It does.
It brings in the science, which is important, but it also brings in those stories.
Those real voices.
Exactly. Because you need both. You need that knowledge, but you need the heart too.
It's a journey, right? Understanding this stuff. And like any journey, you got to start somewhere.
Exactly. And those first steps, they can be small. Maybe you read up on this some more, you know, educate yourself. Or you find a local support group, something like that.
Or maybe even just having a conversation, you know,
Yes.
with someone who experiences the world differently. And hey, maybe this has got you thinking about your own senses in a new way.
Yeah.
It's like we all have those moments, right?
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
That sound, that's just too sharp, or the light's too bright, or that tag on the back of your shirt
I'm the worst.
driving you crazy. And this article actually says that sensory processing, it's a spectrum for everyone.
Yeah, it's not just an autism thing.
Exactly. We're all on there somewhere.
Yeah.
And, you know, it kind of makes you think about that, saying, be kind. Everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about.
So true. Because you just never know what someone else is experiencing, sensory or otherwise.
Right. So empathy, that's key.
It's everything. It's about creating space for those experiences, even if we don't totally get them. Because at the end of the day, this article, it's really about accepting neurodiversity.
And celebrating it, right.
Yeah. Yes. Celebrate it.
It's not about erasing those differences. It's about realizing they're part of what makes us human.
100%.
It's like imagine a mosaic, right? All those different pieces.
I love that.
Each one's unique, but together they make something beautiful, something whole.
Exactly. And when we embrace that, when we embrace those differences, imagine what we can do.
The possibilities are endless.
A world where everyone feels seen, heard, valued. That's what we're going for.
Now that's something to strive for. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive on sensory issues in autism. We covered a lot today.
We did.
But hopefully everyone listening is walking away with some new insights, maybe even a little inspiration to make a difference.
Because even the small things matter. Just listening to someone, being kind, being open to learning something new.
Those little things add up.
They really do.
Well, thanks again for bringing us this article. It was a great conversation.
My pleasure. Always happy to be here.
And listeners, thank you for being here, for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep those questions coming and keep being curious about the world, about each other. We'll see you next time.